had a really interesting career. You know, musician, model, author, director. Your book was very successful. A Guide to Recognizing Your Saints. And you've directed the movie adaptation afterwards. How was it
Trippy.
getting that chance to direct? Was there ever any hesitancy for you as a first-time filmmaker to tell your own story? Was that a struggle? How did that go?
Oh yeah, it was impossible, but it wasn't a dream, of mine. It was, my father was a typewriter mechanic from Nicaragua, and I didn't even use the typewriter. I wrote that book in pen, and I used to work at Tower Records with a guy who put it out, and if 10 people read the original book, I would be surprised. But I was working in a music studio. And Robert Downey was recording at it. So he'd come in and out, and we kind of knew each other from roaming around New York. And he was like, "Oh, we should do a movie." And me and the guy that ended up being my editor, still, we both worked in a dub room there, and we would mess around with iMovie because it was the free editing thing, just doing weird ideas, not imagining that we would ever get a chance to make a movie. But then, yeah, it's like one of those incredible lucky moments. And I mean, the short version of the long, crazy story is I wrote this ridiculous script. I had no freaking idea how to write a script. I never imagined to do it. I saying before I thought INT meant introducing, and it turns out that it's interior. And EXT I thought was exit, and it turns out that's exterior. There's all sorts of lessons you learn along the way. And I was very lucky that a woman named Leslie Erdang, who I have yet to meet, but I sure owe a lot to her, my crazy, ridiculous script of like 150 pages that was completely disastrous, I can imagine. She found something interesting about it and gave it to a woman who runs, Michelle Satter, who runs Sundance Labs. And they called me and said, "Oh, we like your script." I had my phone number on it. Actually, I had the music studio on it because whatever. And I had my real name, Orlando, on it because I thought it'd be embarrassing that it says Ditto in the character. I mean, I used all real names. I mean, whatever. It was insane. And I thought when Sundance called the labs, which is great for any writer or director or actor out there, you should look into it. I didn't know it existed. I heard of the festival,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh, we haven't made a movie." And she's like, "Oh no, we like your script." And I'm like, "Well, how much does this cost?" And she's like, "Free." I thought it was like a Learning Annex ripoff. And and I said, "Oh, well, where is it?" And she's like, "Utah." And I'm like, "Utah? Well, I'll call you back." And then I had the very lucky thing that Robert Downey was coming in and out of the studio. And I said to him, "Hey, I got this call from this Sundance Labs." And he's like, "You better call them back." And next thing I know, I got to be one of the people that they bring there. And they do bring you for free and feed you, which I had a hard time believing. And I was mentored by Carlos Cuarón, who wrote Y Tu Mama Tambien, and Frank Pearson, who wrote Dog Day Afternoon, and Walter Mosley. It's like you're in Wonkaville of filmmaking, and it's just a ridiculous experience that sort of changed my life. And here I am. Yeah, weird, and crazy and ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah,
Allen
and
Ginsberg says, "Don't follow my path to extinction." So I'll double his saying. Yeah.
yeah, and you've had a really successful film career since then. And you just assembled like the most stacked cast for Riff Raff. How was it getting all these really great actors? Bill Murray, Ed Harris, he's like my favorite actor. Lewis Pullman, Union. Like how'd you get all these great names into your film?
Yeah, it's nuts, right? Well, Ed Harris was also an advisor of mine at Sundance, so I had his email, and so sent him a crazy email in the middle of the night because I really believed in this script, and John Polano had written it as a play, and I thought it was pretty special, and I had messed with it a little bit, and luckily Ed responded, which is a dream of anyone's, mine certainly. And Jennifer Coolidge, I mean, it's bananas. I couldn't have asked for better people for the roles. And a lot of people I didn't know. I didn't know who Lewis Pullman was, and I met him a week before filming, and I just was like, "Oh, this guy's great." And the young guy in it, Miles Harvey, the minute he came into just an open call, and the minute that guy walked in, I was like, "Done." I adore him as an actor. So it was a really nice combination of people we all know. of course, the great Bill Murray and Pete Davidson. It was insane. And then people that I certainly didn't know, like Miles, and I'm happy to know now. So one of those very lucky strokes of stuff, you know.
Yeah, that's so interesting. You mentioned that it was written as a play. I can definitely see that now. Having watched the film, I never would have guessed it while watching though. What really grabbed you about that script and made you want to adapt it into a film?
Well, an actor, PJ Ransone, who I love, he had called me about it and said, "Oh, we're going to do this play, and it's all in a room." And so that's how I had met John Polano. And so I read it and we were talking about it and the idea of bringing it outside of a room because maybe that would get a little torturous, for too long. Um, but it felt to me like I read like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, but everybody was Virginia Woolf, Like I was like, oh, it was so exciting for me as a fan of acting, not an actor myself, but I love it. I was thinking, oh, it's one of those movies that like everybody that comes in gets to take over the scene for a while, which usually you know how movies are, and it's one guy and then a supporting actress. This was like, oh, when Sandy comes in, it's her movie, and then when DJ comes in, it's his movie. So I was so excited um, for that, and so it was like, okay, how do I round up a family of Virginia Wolves? And I think we got very lucky with that. I mean, Gabrielle Union, all these people. It was kind of a blessing.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because this really is like a true ensemble. Everybody has a juicy part, everybody has their moments. Um, how is it making sure that, you have such great actors that everybody got a chance to shine and nobody's like overbearing or overly dominant throughout this film? Everybody's sharing the screen and is very generous. How is it kind of finding that through production?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty trippy, right? I mean, you got all these people in a room together. So you don't have a hard time making them shine, that's for sure. These people shine without me there, that's for sure. But it was nice, I think, what I at least as a fan of writing and acting, um, when stuff is special, I think people respect it to some degree. Maybe not always, but I've been lucky in that sense, and you're in a room with seven other people that are pretty damn good. So you kind of do your thing. I was just saying before I saw an interview with Bill Murray because I'm still just a fan, and he said, when you do a movie, you're here to create something you hope is great. We're all trying as hard as humanly possible, and then we'll be friends, And I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it because I feel that way, and I love the craft of it so much, and I'm learning as I go clearly, but you can't have a better bunch of teachers than certainly with this film.
Yeah, for sure. And I wanted to ask you about working with Bill because he's a real highlight. It's just so funny seeing him like just casually murdering people. Like it's quite the scene. That I love the like second scene he's in. It's just so nonchalant with him. What made you think that he could just pull off that very cold, like there's like zero emotion. It's just what he does. It was a really great casting choice.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it was a last minute thing. And I remember hearing, you're going to get a phone call from Bill Murray. And I was like, what? We've heard of this famous phone number, you know? And sure enough, it rang. And, it was like, and, it's nuts, like, again, like I'm a fan first, always, just like anybody else. I've seen these people my whole life. And then, you realize, oh, there's a reason you know him for so long, of them for so long. Yeah, he absolutely crushed that scene in it, man. And what's great is the other actor in it, Scott Campbell, he's from my first movie, Guide to Recognizing Saints. He's such a great actor. And I always, every time I'm doing a movie, I'm thinking of him and PJ Byrne. Can I possibly put them anywhere? Because they're so great. And this movie had it. And I remember calling up Scott and saying, okay, you have it's one scene, but it's pretty fun. And it's across from Bill Murray and Pete Davidson. He's like, I'm buying my ticket now. So it was a nice bunch of people to be in a room together with.
Yeah, you can't beat that. I want to ask you about Lewis Pullman because he's just a
Yeah.
really electric performer. He's just so poised for a major breakout. You said you weren't super familiar with him, so how is it working with him? I'm sure you left very impressed.
Completely impressed. I freaking love that guy. I know this sounds corny, like a director praising freaking actors. I would hate this interview, but I really love that guy. He's so freaking good. And you know what was really interesting is that, Rocco, even the name scares me a little because it felt like, okay, it could get a little cliche here, you know? And originally it was written like he's wearing like a motorcycle jacket. And then the first thing Lewis Pullman said to me was, do I have to wear a motorcycle jacket? And I'm like, no. And he's like, okay, good. And I thought just like you said about Bill Murray in that scene with with shooting the guy, like I thought what Lewis did for the role, in my opinion, what I loved about him as an actor was I kind of like him. He's done some maybe questionably things going along the way, but it wasn't for me like your typical guy in a motorcycle jacket that shows up. Not that I don't love that guy, but I thought that I thought he brings a warmth to someone that could sometimes be a little more cartoonish, you know. And man, he's gonna be a big star, and I'm glad that at least I have his number until he changes it, you know.
Yeah, that's definitely a good thing to have. This film, as I mentioned earlier, like everybody's just really has that chance to shine. It's a very complicated family dynamic that plays
Yeah.
out. I wanted to ask you, later on in the film, we get everybody together, and that's definitely where I can see like the play aspect. But when you saw everybody playing off each other, and just that dynamic was really delivering, how was it on set having all those fun personalities, really working together there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a movie we shot in 21 days, so you don't have everyone was really in that room all the time, and when we have one camera, so when the camera's on one person, they're watching the other people and, or playing with the others. So it was a really fun collaboration, similar probably to a play. I've never directed a play, but I think the actors, from what I witnessed, really collaborated in that sense. Like it was like you said, we're not here to show anyone up. We're here to play together, and that's to me the dream. I mean, I adore it. Like there are times when I remember, and I've been lucky like this with a lot of great actors, where I get caught in the moment, like, well, can we do it again? We don't need it, but I really want to watch it again. So but it was really fun that way, and they're doing a lot of there's so much going on in the room. It's bananas, but yeah, it's kind of a nice deal when it's, seven people like that, eight people like that, and that's everybody in the room, all the actors that we know, and then Emmanuel Postacini, who we may not have known, or Miles or Lewis people. I didn't even know who Jennifer Coolidge was, believe it or not, before we made the movie. And I'm the biggest fan on earth now. And I'm like, now I've caught up to finding out that, oh yeah, a lot of people know and love her, and I'm just one of them,
Yeah, that had to be fun catching up for sure. So many
Oh, for
fun
sure.
performances.
I was watching White Lotus thinking, man, I love that show, and this we had the same DP, Javier Grobert. But I remember I was watching White Lotus, and I was thinking, okay, who's Virginia Woolf these days? Who can do that role? The famous Elizabeth Taylor role. And I'm watching, and I'm going, this freaking lady's really good, And then my wife was like, that's Miss whatever Stifler or whatever, and I'm like, she's good, and she's like, yeah, you're the last person that doesn't know that. So. I'm happy to know it now, you know, personally.
Yeah, and this is another great performance by her. My last question for you: we're almost to the 20-year anniversary of A Guide to Recognizing Your Saints, the
Yeah,
film.
it seems
You know,
impossible.
really strong performances by Downey Jr., by Shia. 20 years later, how do you kind of reflect on that film and how it kind of birthed this whole other avenue of directing for you?
Yeah, look, I'm like Mr. Magoo, man. I go wherever the wind blows, and to me, I didn't dream to be in this business. Doesn't mean I don't adore it or respect it, and I understand, you know, it's funny, a lot of the people I grew up with, they're like, like, oh, the Hollywood elite, and whatever, and I'm like, well, that's kind of like walking into Starbucks and yelling at the barista that, it's a $1 billion company, it's a tricky world, but if you're in for the fight and you love it enough, and they won't kick me out of this game. They might try, and they sure have tried, but I don't leave. And I love to write, and so it's I kind of landed somewhere. Look, I liked the job that I had when I got here. I was working in the dub room. I was very happy. We messed around and played basketball every day. Life was pretty good. And I've walked dogs. I've unloaded trucks. I sold freaking peanuts on 42nd Street and handed out flyers. I'll take this one a little above it, but they were all a fun path, so I'm just on it. That's my trip.